Okay. Good evening. We're holding now Daf Ches Amud Beis. Sorry, Amud Aleph. I'm holding Beis, but the share we're holding Aleph. Ches Amud Aleph. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak. So we brought a machlekes between the two brises. We said that when you bring a get on a svina in Eretz Yisrael, is the svina like Eretz Yisrael? That you have to say b'fanei nechta. One brisa says you have to. And the other, so one brisa says you don't have to. It has a din of Eretz Yisrael. One brisa says you don't have to. So we brought different answers. Now the Gemara says like this. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, when it comes to the rivers in Eretz Yisrael, everybody agrees that the rivers of Eretz Yisrael have the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. What do they disagree? Yam HaGadol is in the Yam HaGadol, which is the Great Sea. What's the Great Sea? This is the Mediterranean Sea. In other words, the boat is located in the Yam HaGadol, in the Mediterranean Sea. So we want to know, realistically, does the Mediterranean Sea have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael or not? Now,
but originally they were thinking that the boat is inside.
Correct.
Water, which is inside Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah. Correct. Now it's in Yam HaGadol, not in Eretz Yisrael. So now the Tanya we learned in a brisa. This is the Sefta Ezehu Eretz Ve'ezu Chutz Eretz. The brisa asks, what is Eretz Yisrael and what is outside of Eretz Yisrael? So he says like this. Kol sheshefea v'yered, and I'll post a picture like this at the end of the shir so you see clearly. Kol sheshefea v'yered, mituri amnim v'lifnim, any slope that descends from an angle from Turi Amnin, which is in Syria, and inwards towards Eretz Yisrael, that has the din of Eretz Yisrael. Mituri amnin v'lachutz, but from Turi Amnin and outwards, in other words northward, that is considered chutz la'aretz as outside of Eretz Yisrael. Hanisin shebiyam, with regards to the islands that are in this sea. So now the din is like this. So we view them as though a string was pulled over them from Turi Amnain in the north to the river of Egypt, which is in the south. And like I said, I'll post. I have a picture.
It's how south you're going to Egypt.
Yeah, I'll post a picture in the. I'll post a picture right after the shir exactly where this is. Okay. Menachut v'lefnim, Eretz Yisrael. Now, from the string and inwards, in other words, east, this is Eretz Yisrael. And menachut v'lachutz, from the string and outwards, west, this is considered like Eretz. This is the opinion of the Chachamim. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says like this: Kol shekeneged Eretz Yisrael, any place that is directly across from Eretz Yisrael, including the sea itself, Hariuk Eretz Yisrael. This is considered part of Eretz Yisrael. Shneimer, as it says, Gvul Yom. And from the western border, you shall have the Great Sea for a border. This shall be from the west border. In other words, according to this opinion, the entire territory directly across Eretz Yisrael is considered part of Eretz Yisrael. Now, and with regards to the islands that are on the sides, in other words, they don't exactly line up on the north and the south. So then like this. This is not California. This is, we view it as though there was a string or pulled over in the north from Kafluria, which is the west of Turi Amnain, to the Okeanos is the Atlantic Ocean, and Menachem Mitzrayim Adam Okeanos, and from the river of Egypt westward until the Atlantic Ocean. Now, Menachut v'lefnim, those islands that lie from the string and inwards are the din of Eretz Yisrael. Menachut v'lachutz, then it's chutz la'aretz. Okay, so now the Gemara says, according to the Chachamim, what do they do with and for the border? Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that the border of Eretz Yisrael extends to the sea. You have a pasuk. It says ugvul. So the Gemara says, the Chachamim needed the Nissen. They needed to teach that the islands themselves are considered to be with Eretz Yisrael.
Which islands are we talking about?
The islands next to Eretz Yisrael, like we just.
Cyprus?
I guess, yeah. Rabbi Yehuda, Nissen. So the Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda would respond that Nissen like Shricha Kra, that you don't need a pasuk in regards to islands because it's obvious that they're part of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, now the Mishnah said before that Rameir says Akoi, when it comes to Akoi, has the din of Eretz Yisrael. Has the din of Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. Right? This is the Mishnah said Akuk Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. So now the Gemara says, they asked Rabbi Rabba a question. What was the question? Hamoicher avdu l'surya. If somebody sells his evet, he sells his evet now to Surya. So the question is, Kamoicher b'chutz la'aretz dami. Is it like he sold his slave to chutz la'aretz? The din is that by evet Kanani, you're not allowed to sell. Evet Kanani is mechuyev in certain mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael. So you're not allowed to sell an Evet Kanani in Eretz Yisrael to outside of Eretz Yisrael. So now this person sold his Evet Kanani from Eretz Yisrael to Syria.
What do you mean Syria? They're sent to a person in Syria.
In Syria, yeah.
So they said Syria. Why was it?
That's what it means.
Okay, bless Syria.
The Syria, that's the expression of the Gemara. He sold it to a person in Syria.
Okay.
So now the question is, he asked him, is it like Kamecher b'chutz la'aretz dami elai? In other words, if Syria has a din of chutz la'aretz, then he is over a lav. And the din is that the other gets a knas that he goes for free, or that the servant goes out free, or the question is, does it have a din of Eretz Yisrael? So Amar Lei, so the Amar Lahu, so Reb Chia bar Abba told him that Tanisua, we learned this in our Mishnah. What does it say? Reb Meir says Akku Eretz Yisrael. The Gittin, that Akku has a din of Eretz Yisrael, the Gittin. Now, why did he specify Gittin? The Gittin in Dafka Gittin, that has a din of Eretz Yisrael. But la avodim loy. So if Akku doesn't have a din of Eretz Yisrael, by avodim, kol shekin Syria, for sure Syria, the Mecharke Tuva, which is far more distant than Akku, then for sure the owner who sold his slave outside, it's like he sold him outside of Eretz Yisrael. Okay. Now that we mentioned the status of Syria, the Gemara now cites halacha. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brayso b'shloisha drachim shavsa Syria Eretz Yisrael. In 3 ways, Syria is equal to Eretz Yisrael. B'shloisha l'chutz la'aretz, and in 3 ways, Syria is daimit to chutz la'aretz. Number 1, afara tami. Number 1 is the soil is tami. Like we said before, it has the din k'chutz la'aretz, and the offer is tami. Somebody who sells his evet to Syria, to people in Syria, it's like he sold it in chutz la'aretz. Maybe you get from Syria, and somebody who brings a get from Syria is maybe in the chutz la'aretz, and he has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav. So that's 3 ways that it's doing with the chutz la'aretz. Again, offer tamei, hameich avdu Syria is kameich the chutz la'aretz, and maybe get from Syria is maybe chutz la'aretz. Now, then the brayso says, ubishleisha la'aretz Yisrael. In 3 ways, Syria is similar to Eretz Yisrael. Number 1, chayav b'maiser b'shvis. It's obligated for maiser and shvis. Eretz Yisrael. V'aretz l'konos lo b'tahara, and somebody who wishes to enter while remaining in a state of tahara nichnas. V'akein esada b'Syria, and somebody who acquires field in Syria. Turn over the next page. Hikoina b'far vore Yerushalayim. It's like he purchases a field in the outskirts of Parvovis, the outskirts of Yerushalayim. Now the Gemara now clarifies. Chayavis b'maiser u'b'shvis Eretz Yisrael. Why is it mechuyev b'maiser and shvis Eretz Yisrael? Because he holds that kibush yachid shmei kibush, that an individual who conquers Eretz Yisrael is considered a conquest. Now, since Syria was conquered by David HaMelech, it's considered as a kibush yachid, and it has the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael. It applies both, and it's mechuyev in the mitzvahs. Now, then the Gemara asks about somebody who wishes to enter it and remain in a state of purity, he can. You just said that the offer is tummy, so how can you say that is okay? So the Gemara says, B'shida teva migdal. We're talking about that the guy came into this place, Syria, in a chest, a box, or a cabinet. In this case, he remains tar, and it's like he didn't come into, even though the chest is on the ground, but since he has the chest to protect him, it's like he didn't come into the ground itself. No, he's just trying to answer this theory. On one hand, you're saying that Syria's chutz la'aretz, that the offer is tummy.
He has a box and he goes into somewhere else. He wouldn't be tar.
Look at Rashi says, "Mashenki be'etzam."
Yeah, Mashenki be'etzam, it wouldn't.
Which
Okay, the Tanya, let's learn. So the Tanya, we're going to brayso hanichnes la'eretz ha'amim b'shida teva migdal. Somebody who enters the land of the nations. In other words, like we said, any territory outside of Eretz Yisrael, in a chest, or a box, or a cabinet. So Rabbi Yehuda Anasi says that he's tummy. Rabbi Yehuda says he's tar. and even Rabbi who says this Tameh only in the lands of the nations. The Gozra al Gusha Valavira, which they decreed upon its glumps of soil and upon its ears. Avol Surya, when it comes to, in regards to Syria, everyone will agree, al Gusha Gozru, they decreed upon the glumps of the soil, but al Avira le Gozru, but they did not decree in regards to the impurity upon its ear. So therefore, it's possible to enter Syria and remain in a state of tar if one does not touch the ground itself. Okay, then the Brisa says, somebody who purchases a field in Syria, it's like he purchases a field in the outskirts of Yerushalayim. So the Gemara says, with regard to which halacha was this stated? In other words, what practical, what comes out practical from the statement? This is the person's allowed to write a bill of sale for this purchase, but I feel b'Shabbos and even on Shabbos. So the Gemara asks right away, b'Shabbos okadaita can enter in your mind that one could write a bill on Shabbos. Writing on Shabbos, we know it's an Isser, which is mechuyev mamish, capital punishment. So the Gemara says, Kedira Omar Rava. And the Gemara explains, this is as Rava says, with regards to a similar issue, that Omer l'Goyva Isa, that's referring to a person tells a guy that he should write this bill of sale, and he does so. Hachanami, here also, Omer l'Goyva Isa. Here too, it's talking about that he's telling a guy to perform an action that is also for you to do on Shabbos, and even though we know that Amir L'Goy is a shvus, it's rabbinically asr, since the Chachamim prohibited instructing a goy to perform a labor on behalf of a Yid on Shabbos, but when it comes to mitzad, the settling of Eretz Yisrael, it goes with Rabbanan, the Chachamim did not make this gzera. Okay, Tara Rabbanan, we learned in our Brisa, Evet Sheviu Gitoi Yekosuf Boy Atzmecho Nechosei Knuyalach. Very interesting din. A slave, now we're going to be talking about a get shichrur. When a person, it's not these days that you have. In the olden days, people had avodim, pashut servants, and correct, yeah, right. Or you could buy a slave, whatever. Let's say goyish slave. So the halacha is like this: with regards to a slave, this Evan now brought a get, but not a get like a divorce, a get shichrur, which means, a bill that he is released. So now, Evet Sheviu Gitti, Evet that brings this shichrur, brings this get, the cost of boy, and it's written on the get like this: Atzmecha unechosai knuyalach. You, he brings a get that the Adon said, you and my property are transferred to you. So Allah is like this: Atzmai, he acquires himself through this shtar shichrur, but nechosam leikana. But in regards to his property, he does not acquire the property unless the document is confirmed through Eidim, just like we said a few times, that when it comes to any shtaris, you need to actually bring Eidim to be Mekayim shtar. So again, this Evid comes, and on the he brings a shtar and it says, Atzmach nechosai knuyalach. So the Beis Din basically say, no problem, you can go free, but the nechosim that the Adon promised you stays with the master until you bring witnesses that validate the shtar. They asked the Shaila, now, what if in the shtar shichr it says all of my property is transferred to you? In other words, in the first case it was atzmecha unechosai knuyalach. What about if the Adon wrote kol nechosai knuyalach? All my property is transferred to you. What's the din? Abai says, since he acquired himself as a free person, so the property is included as well, and kon nechosim. That's what Abai says. He's kind of nechosim as well. So Amalei Rava says, granted, he should acquire himself, maybe have a get. Isha, just like in regards to divorce, when she brings her own document, she's divorced. Like we spoke about yesterday. However, he should not acquire their property, just like in a case, whenever in a typical legal document, if someone brings a legal document that deals, let's say, with monetary matters, and the get was not validated, it was not ratified, the Beis Din will not rely on this document. So to here, and when this Eved brings a shtar shichr, which includes as well a transfer of property, and if it was not ratified, if it wasn't validated, he should not acquire the property. So the Rava asks a good shaila on Abaya. So Hadam Abaya says like this: really, you're right. If he wasn't kind of the nechasim, he can't be kind himself. So Amalei Rava says, okay, Bishleim nechasim lelikni, maybe in the chasim, fine, I understand. Mideh hakim shtar is dama, just like every single star. But ela atzmei likni, let him at least koine himself. Mideh have get isha, just like in the case of the bill of divorce of a woman who could bring her own bill of divorce to testify about it. So Elam Rava says like this: Echad zeh v'echad zeh. With regards to both this case and the case of the shtar shichrer that's written, you and my property, and when it says all my property. Kana, he's kaina. Atzmi kana nechasim leikana. So Amrlei Rav Adabar Masle Rava Kiman. Who does this go like? How does this work? So he says Kiman could be Shimon like Shimon. The Amrinon, the Amar of Shimon says very interesting thing. Palgin and Debura. Remember this in Yeshiva. Palgin and Debura. We divide the statement. In other words, even if there's only one document or a single testimony containing one general statement, halacha says it can be divided. So the Beis Din accepts basically part of the words that he's free, but rejects the rest of them. And he brings a raya. The time we learned in the Mishnah, the Mishnah says a person who writes, who gives a get, and he says all of this property to his slave, he writes, in other words, he gives the document, all of his property to his slave. So the din is, the slave goes for free. Shir karka kolshu, but if he reserved for himself even any amount of land, he does not go out for free.
No way. Oh.
That even the slave doesn't go out for free. Now, Rav Shimon says that Shimon says really, hu ben chayrin. He always is a free person, regardless of the wording of the document, even if the owner reserved the land for himself. Until he says, unless he says that all of my property is given to so and so, my slave, except for one 10,000th of it, in that case, it's possible that the Adin meant to include the slave in the portion that he's not giving. So now this slave is not free. So the slave is not free. Now, what do we see from here? According to Rav Shimon, when the document says all my property, so then there's a distinction is drawn between the slave and the property as claimed by Rabbah. So we see basically we do say Palgin on Dibura. Okay, let me make a quick chazara, and we will continue tomorrow very early. Okay, we started off today's share. Just see here. Okay, just Lipinski. Okay, we started off this year today. We brought a machlekes, the Stira and Brises between one Brises says that when you bring the get besvina, it has Gittin of Eretz Yisrael. One Brises says it has Kechus La'aretz. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak says that when it comes to the rivers of Eretz Yisrael, everybody agrees that it has Gittin Eretz Yisrael. The machlekes was in Yam HaGadol, in the Mediterranean Sea. Like we said, the Bryce asks what's considered Eretz and what's considered Chutz La'aretz. So we said anything that goes downwards from Turei Amna and Lifnim is Eretz Yisrael, and when it goes from Turei Amna and Lechutz, and I said I'll post a picture of that, is Chutz La'aretz. The islands should be Yam. So we see, basically we draw an imaginary line from Turei Amna to Ad Nachal, and from Chutz Lifnim as Eretz Yisrael, and Mechutz Lechutz is Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi says no, anything which is opposite Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael, like it says Gvul. And the rivers, the rivers that are on the islands that are on the side of it, also we draw this a line from Kafluria to the Atlantic Ocean and from Egypt, and we say that in that imaginary line, Lefnim has Eretz Yisrael, and Achut Lechutz is Chutz La'aretz. So the Gemara says, what did the Rabbanan do with the word Gevul? So he says they need it for the islands, that the islands have a din of Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi says it's obvious that the islands have a din of Eretz Yisrael. Then Rameir says, Akuz Eretz Yisrael. So they asked Reb Chia Bar Abba, somebody who sells his Eved to Surya, is it considered like he sold them in Chutz La'aretz or not? So he says, it's a Beferish Mishnah. Rameir says, Aku Eretz Yisrael Gittin, Mashma Gittin, only by Gittin, by Avodim not. So if by Aku, by Avodim, it has a din of Chutz La'aretz, Kol Shekin Surya, which is further. Taran Rabbanan, 3 ways it's Surya has the din of Eretz Yisrael, and 3 ways Chutz La'aretz Yisrael. The offer Tameh is the din of Chutz La'aretz. Hamecha Avdil Surya is Chutz La'aretz Yisrael. Hamevi Chutz get from Surya is like he brought from Chutz La'aretz. And 3 ways has the din of Eretz Yisrael. Is Chayv and Ma'aser and Shvis Eretz Yisrael. Somebody who wants to come B'Taira, he can come in. And a Koine Sadeh is Surya is like he bought it in the outskirts of Yerushalayim. It's Chayv and Ma'aser and Shvis. Why? Because he holds Kibush Yachid by David HaMelech by who conquered this
Right, they
Syria.
conquered Syria.
Right. So kibush yachid shmei kibush, and somebody wants to go. So now the Gemara says somebody wants to go betara, he can go in, but you just said the offer is tummy. So the Gemara says we're talking about that he went in with a shita teva and migdal. As we know that even when somebody goes to Eretz Am b'shita teva and migdal, Rebbe holds matame, Rabbi Yossi holds it's tar. So the Gemara says even Rebbe in this case will hold that it is tar by Surya. Why? Because gusha gazra avir le gazru. Now, v'akaina sada b'Surya is kaina in the outskirts of Yerushalayim l'ma'ilchasa. If you could write this Aina on Shabbos. The Gemara says, Shabbos? How can you do that? So he says, no, you're asking a guy to do it on Shabbos, and even though Amir for Shvus is Usr, nevertheless, and Eretz Yisrael goes Rabbanan. Tana Rabbanan, Eved that brought a get, and it wrote, and on the get, Shichrur, it says, you and my properties are Kone L'cha. So he says that he can kain himself, but Nechasim Le'kana. So they ask the question, what about his Kol Nechasik Knui L'cha? So Abaya says, since he's kain himself, he's kain Nechasim. Rava says, Mela, kain himself, fine. Like a get, but nechasim you need to have mamish kiyum shtaris like every single shtar. So Abaya says no. Potentially kana nechasim kana atzma. So Rava says exact opposite. Mela nechasim he's not kind like every shtar, but he himself why can he not be kind? So Rava says you're right. Both cases he's kind nechasim and kind himself and not kind nechasim. Why? Because we say palgin in the bura and we brought a raya that somebody who writes kana nechasim la'avda yatzim mecherim and if he leaves any of it then layatzar. Shimon says la'elam. Until he says so we see that he holds of the din of palginon di bura.
Wow, Rabbi,